All right, we're live. Welcome. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Jeremy Nichols, and I'm the Climate and Energy Program Director for Wild Earth Guardians. And every week, every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Mountain Time, we do a Facebook Live event, and we check in on some of the work that Wild Earth Guardians Climate and Energy Program is doing. We do a deep dive, and we try to answer questions that might come up from our viewers. And today, I'm actually going to try to get Rebecca Sobel in on our call on our Facebook Live. Let's see. Trying to get Rebecca Sobel in here on our call. Our Facebook Live event. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties. Hang in with us. Let's see.
Yay!
Yay!
Hi, Jeremy. Hi, everyone.
All right. So Rebecca Sobel, Wild Earth Guardian's Senior Climate Energy Campaigner, is joining me on today's Facebook Live check-in. Today, we are going to talk about our efforts to defend New Mexico from a plan to dump toxic frack water into the state's stream water supplies and onto crops. A really dangerous proposal that is developing right now, and amazingly with the support of the governor and her environment department. So we're up against people who should be normally on our side and normally helping to advance a transition away from fossil fuels, yet they're the ones driving a plan to basically give the oil and gas industry a huge boost. But before we go there, Rebecca, and before we talk, I just want to give a few updates for folks. First off, we have new stickers. Oh, it's reversed, but anyway, it says "Time Out, Say No to Fracking." These are stickers we're going to be distributing in Colorado at events, trying to call on the governor to call a timeout on new fracking in the state of Colorado. It's part of our Colorado for Clean Air campaign. If anybody wants stickers, reach out to us. We'll send you a bunch. We've got a few thousand on hand, so we'd love to get them out, give folks a chance to sport the stickers. So there's that. Also, if you missed our Facebook Live events, our past Facebook Live events, we do this weekly. All the videos are on Guardian's Facebook page. And last week's video, me and Becca Fisher with Wild Earth Guardians were outside the federal courthouse in Denver talking about our clean air oil and gas. Definitely worth the watch, and check out our past videos too. And make sure to join us every week. Every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Mountain Time, we do a Facebook Live check-in, and we talk about the work that Wild Earth Guardians Climate and Energy Program is doing and trying to answer questions that might come up. And we have a lot of fun. So anyway, let's get into today's event. Rebecca Sobel again, who is in San Jose right now.
I'm actually in Albuquerque right now. I have to apologize to everyone about my sound and my light. I'm here in front of a Green Amendment meeting with author Maya Van Rossum, so I'm just stepping out because this is a very important issue to discuss. Apologies for sound. Echo. I'm an investor.
No. Yeah, I see that. No, thanks for being able to make the time, Rebecca. I really appreciate it because you have really been on the front lines in terms of engaging on this issue of dumping toxic frack water into streams in New Mexico. I know that there was a public meeting last week that you were at, and you've been talking with a lot of the folks on the ground who really stand to lose a lot if this does actually gain some momentum. So before we get to that, the meeting last week and what's to come, let's just, I mean, what is going on here? Like, why is this concept of dumping toxic frack water in New Mexico? How is this even a topic of discussion?
Sure. First, we have to understand how fracking works, right? So fracking works by taking the combination of fresh water and a proprietary chemical cocktail and a thing called proppant, which is often sand. Drill down 10,000 feet under the ground at really high pressure to fracture up rock, and then used to extract oil and gas. But when oil and gas comes back, it's not the only thing that comes back. It's also oil and gas waste or fracking waste byproduct that industry has coined as produced water. Is also produced during the extraction of oil and gas. An industry in New Mexico actually produces 7 times as much produced water as it does oil and gas. So that means for every barrel of oil or gas that's coming up, there is 7 times as much of this toxic fracking waste that comes with it. And so industry has a big problem. In southeast New Mexico, we have the world's largest oil field in the Permian Basin in the greater Carlsbad region. And they've run out of space. So right now, when the industry fracks wells, they've
Oh, you there, Rebecca? I think Rebecca froze. At least that's what it's looking like on my end here. So we'll try to get Rebecca back in, but what she was talking about was basically as the oil and gas industry has boomed in Southeast New is increasing substantially. So we'll try to get Rebecca back in here in just a second, but that's really the issue that we're dealing with. As fracking has taken hold, the process of hydraulic fracturing in southeast New Mexico in particular, the industry is now generating more wastewater than ever before. There's been something like a 700% increase in oil and gas wastewater production. And this isn't just, it's the frack water, it's the water they use in hydraulic fracturing, but it's also water that is actually coming out of the ground with the oil and gas that has been trapped in these shale formations for millions of years. And now as the industry is producing, it's pumping up the water. And so normally what industry does to dispose of this waste, they inject it deep underground into geologic formations where it has no chance of ever reaching the surface. The reason is because this water is too toxic to treat. It is so full of contamination. Oh, Rebecca wants to get in here. Hang on, there, we'll get Rebecca back in. So this water is too toxic.
Keep going.
Okay, so I was kind of picking up where you left off about fracking, the amount of water being produced. I highlighted how there's been a 700% increase in the amount of wastewater produced by the oil and gas industry in southeast New Mexico, and also how this water is too toxic to treat. There are no technologies available that can strip away all the various contaminants that are in this water. These contaminants include salts, radionuclides, like radioactive materials, heavy metals and other contaminants. And the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, and most regulators have said there's simply no way that we can treat this and put it back in our rivers. It has to be deep, and what is happening is that industry is finding that it has fewer and fewer options to dispose of ever wastewater, and they're having to go further, travel further to inject this wastewater around to have to spend more money. And so they're kind of up against they're in a bind. They are facing the prospect of not being able to dispose of their waste, and if they can't dispose of their waste, they can't produce. Now that's normally a good thing for us, but industry wants to be able to produce, and so what they have done is they've lobbied fiercely in Santa Fe, Mexico capital, to get the governor to support finding a way to dump their wastewater into streams, into drinking water supplies, onto crops, finding other ways to use it other than injecting it deep underground. And they actually convinced the legislature to pass a bill last legislative session called the Produced Water Act. And Rebecca, tell us a little bit about that act.
Yeah, let's talk about it, and let's give our viewers a chance to learn a little bit more about the act than most New Mexicans ever got to hear, unfortunately. But so New Mexico has very short legislative sessions, and in the final hours of the last legislative session, we only meet for 30 and 60 days alternating every other year. The final days of the session, this Produced Water Act got ramrodded, and it was sponsored by Nathan Small, who is a New Mexico representative and is also married to Xochitl Torres Small, who is a New Mexico congresswoman in the southern part of New Mexico. And Nathan Small was also the co-sponsor of a bill called the Energy Transition Act, which committed New Mexico to 80% carbon-free electricity by 2050, which is a great step, not enough, but a great step. And so the same sponsor, after days, literally 2 days, after just passing and being lauded for a very pro-conservation environmental bill, runs through the Produced Water Act, where it never received a proper public hearing. It cleared the House floor and the Senate floor in 72 hours in the final days of the legislative session. And they did this very sneaky thing where they coupled an ability for industry to be able to receive fines, because industry is unable to be fined in New Mexico. They gave industry the authority, but they gave the state the authority to fine industry, but they limited it very, very tightly to $25,000 per incident. And then they attached this boondoggle of a Produced Water Act, and it's a bill that started at 5 pages and ended at 36 pages. And basically what it did was say, this waste product, here is the process that we can use to turn this waste product into a commodity that gets treated like water. And that is very damaging and challenging to New Mexico. And even calling fracking waste produced water makes the assumption that there is some water in this toxic waste. But when New Mexico passed that bill, it signaled that there would be a process of rulemaking for how industry can open the door to use fracking waste outside of fracking operations.
So this bill is, industry, like I said, they lobbied fiercely for it. It passed in a flash. And the whole goal of it is to try to commodify the oil and gas industry's wastewater, to try to find some way to justify using it outside of the oil fields. Because right now, they can actually reuse it to some degree for fracking. Already toxic to begin with, so the use of toxic wastewater in fracking, while disturbing, and we don't condone it at all, it is allowed, and it is used right now. Industry does reuse its frack water in fracking. But outside of the oil fields, absolutely, there is no allowance for the use of wastewater for any other use. Not for drinking water, not for replenishing streams. It's too toxic to treat. And it would utterly destroy our natural water systems if rules ultimately open the door for the dumping of this toxic wastewater. And that's the unfortunate thing here. The Produced Water Act, it did not say that the state had absolutely committed and had to move forward with finding ways to dump frack water into streams. But the state is interpreting it as directing them to adopt rules that would effectively open the door for that to happen. And we're saying, whoa, wait a minute, time out. We cannot move forward with regulating this water without any sideboards in place to ensure that we are not going to poison streams, drinking water supplies, or ruin crops in New Mexico. So we're trying to get the governor to put the brakes on this, and we are lobbying some fairly pointed criticism her way and toward her environment department, because this process is unfolding. Rebecca, there was a public meeting last week, first public meeting around this issue in Albuquerque. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about that process and what's happening.
So right now, the Environment Department and the Office of the State Engineer are undergoing a stakeholder meeting process where they're asking the public to submit input on what they're calling an inevitable rulemaking of produced water, which is what's really challenging. So last week was the first of those meetings. It took place in Albuquerque. And the department heard a lot of natural criticism from folks that are sort of like, whoa, how are you trying to sell us fracking waste? And one of the most troubling things that I heard was that the department, and we will post the links to the department's presentation to this video, so you can read for yourself the boondoggle about produced water. But the department defines produced water as water produced from the production of oil and gas. And what we're seeing is this slippery slope of this assumption of inevitability of continuing of an oil and gas industry in New Mexico, and the administration bending over backwards to do everything it can to make sure that industry perpetuates. But we have New Mexicans, last year our state budget, over half of it came from oil and gas, which puts New Mexico in a bind and really underscores the need to diversify our economy beyond an industry that's ruining our air, water, and now soon to be all of rivers and streams downstream of us. What was interesting, so the department's going to have 5 meetings all across the state, which in theory is supposed to listen to the public and then be incorporated into the pending rulemaking. But if the department was serious about engaging those stakeholders, us as stakeholders, they wouldn't make rulemaking inevitable. And they would be open to the fact that maybe opening the doors to integrating fracking waste outside of fracking operations is bad for New Mexicans. And I just what offends me really personally about this proposal as a New Mexican is New Mexico has a really long history of extraction, of being a sacrifice zone for the nation, whether that's uranium mining or nuclear testing. This is where the atom bomb was created and tested on people that have been actually exempted from remediations and protections related to that testing. Now, New Mexico, which is the poorest state in the nation and one of the brownest states in the nation and one of the highest numbers of indigenous populations, is being the dumping ground for industry's fracking waste. And that's happening, frankly, with the governor trying to pitch this as a pro-conservation effort, that if we pour fracking waste into New Mexico's rivers and streams and onto our crops, we're actually saving water in a desert state. And they assume New Mexicans aren't smart enough to know the difference, but we are.
Yeah. The governor, Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham, has made some fairly disturbing comments around the prospect of dumping frack water in New Mexico's waters, saying things like it's good for New Mexico. It'll replenish streams. It will be able to irrigate crops. And it's like, whoa, do you understand what you're talking? You're talking about poison water. This is not good for New Mexico. And the irony of it all is that it's almost like she's pitching it as a climate solution, because New Mexico is facing extreme water shortages in the face of the climate crisis. The state is already straining, and it's going to strain even more in the future when it comes to clean and actually abundant water supplies. And she's pitching this as, whoa, we can just take the oil and gas industry's frack water and replenish streams and be able to weather the climate crisis. And it's like, that is not a climate solution. If you want a climate solution, keep it in the ground, help transition New Mexico away from oil and gas. And that's really what we're trying to get at here, that this isn't about better regulation. It's not about finding ways to accommodate industry. It's about saying, no, we've reached a limit. If you can't dispose of your waste, you can't produce. And we're actually going to enforce a hard line in terms of how this waste can be handled and processed. And we are absolutely not going to let it be dumped into streams or onto crops. So that's what we're trying to get at here, and why we're saying, whoa, time out, put the brakes on this rulemaking process and try to drive public through these public meetings to try to help deliver that message clearly. And Rebecca, there's another meeting in Santa Fe, right? It's probably going to be have a lot of it and probably some very strong public comments. What's your sense of how that meeting's going to go? So
the next stakeholder meeting related to produced water rulemakings is next Wednesday in Santa Fe on October 30th. And the youth in Santa Fe, under a group called Youth United for Climate Crisis Action, YUCCA, they've been steadily calling on the governor to enact a climate emergency and redirect all of the agencies in her power to take climate change seriously. They're asking for a fracking moratorium, they're asking for community solar legislation, and they're asking, most importantly, for industry to foot the cost of just transitions. And next Wednesday, the youth will be going back to the governor's office and reminding her of their call and asking, seeing if she's ready to declare a state of emergency on behalf of the climate. And then after that, those youth are going to join us at the Produced Water meeting, which is ironic if the governor, we're expecting a couple of the climate change task force report that's meant to come from the governor's office was meant to be released on September 15th, and it still has yet to be released. And that's in theory a report from the governor that's meant to say how the New Mexico Environment Department and the Energy, Minerals, and Natural Resource Department plan to address climate change. No one's seen that plan. So while she's not giving us a plan, hours after youth meet with her, she's actually showing us that her plan is about integrating fracking waste, and that her climate solution is to let New Mexicans drink frack water. So the youth will be pointing out that hypocrisy at the meeting, and will be engaging in more public comment. Everyone can, if you can't attend the Santa Fe meeting, there are 3 other meetings to attend in Farmington, in Carlsbad, and in Las Cruces, and we'll post the information and the dates for that. You can still submit written comments via the New Mexico Environment Department email, but most importantly, we want the governor to know that she can't play both sides, that she can't say that she's trying to to meaningfully address climate change and still cater to oil and gas industry's every whim and try to get New Mexicans to be drinking frack water. This is really a testament to her administration to see where the rubber hits the road and how serious she is about climate change. So we'd love for everyone to tweet at her, to post on her Facebook page, and to send her emails in the link that we'll post below of her comment form, just saying, you know, New Mexico is not interested in becoming another Flint, Michigan, but also if there's an industry that produces 7 times as much waste as it does oil and gas, we have a waste problem in addition to a fossil fuel problem, and that means we should keep it in the ground.
Yeah, that's right. We've highlighted that before too, what we call the climate blind spot that Governor Lujan Grisham has. She's making some fairly strong comments around the need for climate action and adopting goals of confronting the climate crisis, but then at the end of the day, actively supporting, endorsing, and encouraging more fracking in the state of New Mexico. And as we've calculated before, the total emissions that is producing, when you factor in not only the on-the-ground direct emissions, but then the downstream, the end-use emissions that we call them, I mean, we're talking a massive climate footprint. And there's just no way that New Mexico has any chance of confronting the climate crisis if that fracking is going to continue as it's on. I mean, she really does need to understand we have to wind this down and you know, come up with a system where industry does start to foot the bill and take some of the funding that's coming from current oil and gas, put it in a transition fund to help the state become more economically diverse and more importantly, more sustainable and ultimately more prosperous, because as oil and gas booms, it also busts. I mean, it's a finite resource and a bust is inevitable. Why not plan for that now by ensuring industry is paying the true cost of the damage that it's causing so that we can start to move New Mexico beyond fossil fuels? Obviously, if the door opens for Frackwater in the state's waters, that transition is going to be way more difficult. Every time it break, whether it's a rollback regulation or some other accommodation that puts the public health cost onto the public and takes it away from them, it just makes it a transition. We have to start keeping it around. So we view this rulemaking as critical. I mean, we have to stop. We have to choice. If we're serious about the climate crisis, if we're serious about transition, we have to stop it. And that's cool right now. And this is about weighing in and saying, well, here's our idea for a rulemaking. This is too toxic to treat. You can't regulate this stuff. You need to enforce a hard line. So Rebecca, you interacted with the environment during last meeting. I mean, how are they responding to this concern here? Because it was almost they were surprised that people didn't want frack water dumped in their streams. Is that
they tend to treat the public like we're idiots, like we just don't understand the magic science of how toxic fracking waste can be turned into all of the things that we want. And it's really, I mean, it's the biggest boondoggle snake oil pitch, but during public comment periods, the department was accurately defending their position. So they were, after somebody was then giving a comment on more than one occasion, they would defend it and correct somebody's opinion as if the public just doesn't understand. But the public understands that Michelle Lujan Grisham's comments that her staff work for industry and not for them are not just. And the public is demanding that the department, instead of working out how to deal with industry's garbage, figure out how to protect the public health and environment. And so that's really been the call, is why are our elected leaders and our state government working for oil and gas instead of to protect the health of New Mexicans. And I think they're in for a rude awakening. I mean, you know, you mentioned the health costs too, but we talked about how we're dealing with the world's largest oil field in New Mexico, and that's potentially responsible for 10% of the global carbon budget to secure safe degrees of warming. And that makes fracking waste in New Mexico a national and international issue, because if we allow industry to offload their waste, they're just pumping more oil and gas out of this region, and that spells climate disaster for everyone.
Yeah, it's really important to highlight that, you know, what's happening in New Mexico is so significant in that global context, because a lot of the oil and gas that's produced there, it is the Permian Basin of West Texas and South New Mexico is the largest oil producing region in the world right now. A lot of that oil is being piped to the Gulf and shipped to other countries to be burned. So this is very much a world problem here. And if New Mexico opens the door for frack water to be dumped into streams and on crops and whatnot, yeah, there's global implications. And we have to enforce the line, because if New Mexico opens the door, then what's going to stop other states from opening the door too, who may also be very pro oil and gas? We know the governor means well, but she did comment recently that she told her environment department that they work for the oil and gas industry. And she may not have meant it as if they are directly working for the industry, but it definitely came off wrong. And it sent a disturbing message to the public that, when it comes to health and the environment, the industry comes first. And it's just a bad way to manage. It's a bad way to represent people. It's a bad way to govern. And so hopefully her environment department and Governor Lujan Grisham start to get the message through this public process that, we're sick of footing the bill of industry's garbage. Like you said, this is their garbage. We're paying for it. And we have potentially we will be paying for it more significantly. It's time to say enough. We're sick of dealing with their water pollution, their public lands destruction, and we're sure as hell not going to put up with having to pay for their frack water to be in our systems. It's not tolerable. So hopefully they'll get that message, and hopefully we can get the word out more broadly too, because this is, like I said, we're talking New Mexico, a lot of Mexico insider stuff, but everybody who's concerned about climate, who's concerned fighting. Are you coming through, Rebecca?
Yours sounded weird to me, but I don't know if that's just me.
Okay, maybe we'll get back on track. This has been a kind of a glitchy Facebook Live event, so thanks for putting up with that. So we posted a lot of links on our Facebook page. This video is going to be posted, and you'll see all those links. So please go visit our Wild Earth Guardians Facebook page and learn more about this process. And stay tuned for more too. We're going to be getting some action alerts out. We're going to be doing a lot more media work around this rulemaking, and of course, with next week's meeting in Santa Fe, it's definitely going to be a big deal. So stay tuned. Follow Wild Earth Guardians Climate Energy Program on social media. It's at Climate West on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. That's where we provide a lot of good detailed information about what Wild Earth Guardians Climate Energy Program is up to. And also follow Wild Earth Guardians too. The organization, we're doing a lot of great work right now. Definitely stay plugged in. So Rebecca, I think we're pretty close to wrapping up. This has been great to have you. Thank you so much. Rebecca has stepped out of a meeting in Albuquerque to join us on Facebook Live today. But she is truly a guardian on the front line in New Mexico, trying to rally support for ending this proposal to dump toxic frack water in New Mexico streams. So we really appreciate her time, and thanks to everyone who joined us today too and viewed our Facebook Live event. We're hoping to keep this up. We've done it, I think, our 10th or 11th episode, and we've been doing it every week, been keeping it up. It's been a ton of fun. Next week, we're going to be checking in around the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission is meeting, and we're actually going to be live on site and talking about what's going on with the Oil and Gas Conservation Commission and oil and gas regulation in Colorado, but also in relation to oil and gas pipelines. We actually have a big lawsuit right now challenging the federal government's failure to inspect oil and gas pipelines on public lands, and at the same time, the Colorado are contemplating how to better regulate pipelines. So they kind of go hand in hand, and we'll be checking in on all that next week. So join us. Thanks for being here today. Rebecca, any last parting words?
No, thanks everybody for watching. We couldn't do it without you. We need your voice, and together we yell a whole lot louder. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next week.